thought I was already.
Dun, 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 dun. It's a rallying cry for video games for mental well-being. And our special guest today is Gabe Pappalordo.
Well done.
And what's that?
Well done. You got the name.
Pappalordo. I like that. That's excellent. And here he is right here, Gabe Pappalordo. And enjoy this excellent presentation. If you have some questions, just drop them in here and we will make sure and get to them after his presentation is done. I'll come back and I'll grill him with a bunch of good questions. So, Gabe, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it. Hello and welcome, everyone. Yes, this is a rallying cry that's been leveraged over the past several years. A lot of really interesting things are happening at the intersection of our industry and mental health. So the purpose of this today is we're going to go through and look all over the world. We're going to look at different ways that narrative has been employed, different movements in our industry, inside and out. And what I really hope everyone takes away from this is the knowledge that the video game industry has recognized the problem and they are doing a lot of innovative and interesting things to address it. And I hope that you have a lot of different leads, so a lot of different projects and companies, different things going on that you can go and check out. So let's dive in. First, talking a little about the problem. I promise that there is a hopeful message in this, but we're going to get a little dark before we start going into the light. So let's take it away. Okay. So this number on the screen was what really motivated me to change careers and dive into this. It was what I saw a Blue Cross Blue Shield metric of a 63% increase in depression in 12 to 17-year-olds in 3 years. Now, I told you we were going to get a little dark. Now we're going to get a little darker. You'll notice this is from 2016. This is before COVID. This is before 2020. And we saw a 63% increase in depression in young people before all of the absolute nonsense that has been happening over the past 4 or 5 years. So we know that these numbers have likely gotten worse given everything else. And we're doing that wonderful thing where they auto move my slides for me. How can I make it not do that? I'm going to hit pause and hope that it doesn't. So better still, anxiety is on the rise, ADHD is on the rise, the human life expectancy is going backwards for the first time in American history, and it's suicide and overdose that is leading that change. So that's pretty dark. And we definitely think that there is a link to our advances in technology, making us feel more socially isolated, even though we're more connected. It's a more shallow type of connection. Some of you may have checked out the Center for Humane Technologies recent The Social Dilemma documentary that documented this absolute steep rise, especially in young females, anxiety and depression, really when social media kind of went fully online and took over all of our lives. But just because tech is a part of the problem doesn't mean it can't be a part of the solution. And I think that there's some really exciting things in the video game industry where we are starting to push back on some of these trends. So let's take a look. Video games are a really wonderful medium for this because we use behavioral reinforcement, feedback systems, and narrative to impart new skills to engage and retain players. And we know that gamification has been used in all sorts of training. And what we also know is that there are well-being skills that can be practiced to help build resilience to anxiety and depression, and also to build focus, for instance, with people with attentional disorders. So why not leverage the power of gamification in a training context toward building the focus and resilience to these rising issues? The other beautiful thing is that there's just been a recognition inside and outside of the video game industry that mental health themed games help to build empathy, and we can use narrative to decrease stigma and also to introduce people to empowering narratives of taking control and bettering their condition in the mental well-being space. So I have a lot of things up here. These are different games and industry movements, but I'm going to dive in a bit more detail here. So 1 second. Technical difficulties, everybody. Apologies. We're going to go from current slide and please stop advancing my slides. Okay, so all of these games up on the screen here, some of them quite old, some of them very brand new. I want to start with some narrative representations that, even though I really love these games, they have not aged well in some of their representations of people with mental illness. So looking at Amnesia, The Dark Descent, and Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, both of these games were ones that employed a mechanic called the sanity bar. And the idea was that as you encountered these horrible monsters, these Cthulhian nightmares, that they would inflict lower sanity on you. And this would manifest itself in psychosis happening, on screen. And so you would have your characters begin to hallucinate, and it was usually always presented in a negative way. And there's maybe not the best message being sent there when we are inflicting hallucinations as a status effect as a punisher in a game. That may not be the most empathetic treatment of people who really do deal with this stuff in the day-to-day life. Eternal Darkness was particularly brilliant in the sense in that they not only have the characters hallucinate, they would also have you as the player hallucinate by doing things like telling you that your save file had been deleted, or putting a fly on your screen that would make you think that something was happening, and then tricking you and saying, haha, it was all a dream. But Hellblade is a deviation from that, which is really interesting. So Hellblade came out recently, Senua Sacrificed by Ninja Theory Studios, and they got awards across the boards for what they achieved. And the way that they did that was by really taking seriously when they said, we are going to take a person with psychosis, deep, deep psychosis, and make this the champion and heroine of our story. We need to make sure that we are presenting a really balanced and empathetic view of this character. And they did not skimp on that. One thing that they did was they partnered with Cambridge University and Dr. Paul Fletcher, who works as a clinician with people with deep psychosis as a career, and used him as a subject matter expert. And they didn't stop there. They formed a subject matter expert panel of people who suffer with psychosis, of people, family members of people who suffer with psychosis. And what they did was they created a character that was deeper than their diagnosis. We didn't just make Senua, a stereotype, and we also didn't use her condition as a status effect. We really explored the ins and outs and got really deep with this character. And so much so that people who played the game have said, if I ever wanted to explain someone what it was like to live with psychosis, I would recommend that they play this game. I think one of the most interesting things that came out of this, and I'm going to switch tabs here, so let's see if the tech cooperates, is that we often think of the hallucinations and stuff with psychosis as being a terrifying experience. And I will say that Senua is primarily, I would say, a horror game, and I think very much does lean on that heavily. But there's also a lot of beauty that can be seen through people, even though they're not neurotypical. So I'm going to take a moment here to risk sharing a different screen and see how this goes. I want to show this one sequence out of Senuas. There we are. And I don't see it giving me the option to share audio. So we will see a Chrome tab. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to let this run. Is it showing up? There it is. Great.
How does he so effortlessly court the world and bliss? If only she could do the same. See the world through eyes anew and dance with it, just like he does.
What's your name?
Senua.
I haven't seen you before.
I don't leave home much.
Oh, Zenua's daughter.
I have to go.
Wait. Who taught you to fight like that?
No one.
No one?
Well, I watched you, and...
You learnt all of that from watching me? You should become a warrior,
Me?
I'm Dilly. I'm here for the warrior trials. Just come and watch. And bring your sword.
All right, let's switch back over. Okay, and we're back over here. Is that working? Okay, so I bring this game up, and I bring that sequence up in particular because when they interviewed these people who suffered with this deep psychosis, it wasn't always terrifying. You know, sometimes there were these deep, almost psychedelic experiences, these deep, saturated colors, things that you would imagine as being almost magical in their experience. And this is something that people with psychosis was their lived experience. And so something that I found very moving about that sequence in the game was not always treating psychosis in this, you know, terrifying negative way, but also showing how it can actually be quite beautiful and artistically inspiring. So I thought what Ninja Theory achieved with this was really quite incredible. And they never would have done that if they didn't really take the time to not treat Senua as a stereotype. They really took the time to get to know their subject matter and presenting it that way. Now, you don't have to have AAA resources, on the other hand, to do good narrative representation of mental health, and you can also do it in symbolic ways. So I have Celeste down here in the bottom right, and Celeste is an absolutely incredible game. If you haven't played it, it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And what makes Celeste so incredible is that not only is it just an absolutely tight, incredible platformer, it is taking the self-critical voice and creating a metaphor out of it of climbing a mountain. And so Celeste is a young woman who has a deep negative critical voice inside of her. And as she climbs this mountain, it's her learning to not resist this voice, not fear this voice, but get to understand it, understand what its purpose is, and ultimately befriend it. And I found that Celeste's message was one where it takes grit, it takes determination, it takes climbing the mountain to do the work to reach that place of peace. But when you do so, you can actually get a lot of benefit out of doing it. So highly recommend Celeste as well, not only because it is a fantastic game, but also because of the metaphor for mental health that it presents. So moving beyond just the narrative now. Okay, that slide is not updating. So why is it not updating? Cool. All right. Industry movements. So outside of game content itself, we have a lot of cool things happening in the industry. So Games for Change is an organization that highlights all sorts of games with pro-social messages, not just mental health or health, but they have a very big mental health and health track. So they have a conference that's coming up. You can take a look at it. There are some different resources. You can get a sense of a lot of the different projects happening in this industry. I also want to highlight Take This and Guardians Mental Health. These are both fantastic organizations working specifically in the video game industry to decrease stigma and provide resources. So if you've ever gone to a major, a major conference, you know how big and busy and loud those can be. You've got booths going off, you've got people colliding into each other. Take This took that and decided to make AFK rooms. So what they did was they reserved a room where it could be quiet. And if you're ever feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of the activity of the convention, you can just go and chill in an AFK room and you can play a game or color in a book or get some different resources there. So Take This does a lot of good stuff and they put out a lot of content. So if you want to follow them on Twitter @TakeThis.org, Eve and Dr. B and Rachel are doing really good work there. My friends over at Guardians Mental Health are also fantastic. What they have done is they have a really active Discord. And they have a bot called RTS bot that you can embed, and they're attempting to make it something that you can embed into any engine. And what this is a bot that you can ask questions of. So you can say, hey, depression, and it'll give you a list of depression resources. Or you can say anxiety, it'll give you a list of anxiety resources. They also have licensed therapists in the Discord, and I need to talk channels for people who can go and and ask questions and seek resources as well. So really proud of both of those organizations. Emergent Technologies are also becoming a really interesting piece of this puzzle. So there's a funny picture there of me with much longer hair. You may not be able to see it, but what I've actually got is I've got electrodes on my scalp, and I'm engaging in a compassion meditation. What the electrodes are doing is they're actually measuring differences in brain activity as a result of me doing that compassion meditation and giving me feedback on how that's changing the patterns in my brain. So this is something that's been going on for a little while. There's a product called Muse that's out there. It's a headband that offers this type of solution. There are many others out there, but I wanted to highlight one in particular, and this is Helium XR. So this is by a company called Storia, and what they do is they combine the neuroperipherals with VR, and they allow you to put on the neurofeedback headband and put on the VR goggles. And I did one, for instance, where I was at the foot of a tree that had been defaced. There was bottles on the ground, spray paint on the trunk, all this type of stuff. And the game instructed me to engage in this compassion meditation. So I did. And as I did so, the neurofeedback read that I was doing the meditation and presented this bright light on the screen that then spread out and cleaned the tree of the garbage. And I sort of healed the situation using the compassion meditation, which I thought was really powerful. And they've got they've had a lot of traction now. They have it, for instance, in hospitals if people are like going under, just something to be able to do stress relief, to be able to put themselves into these immersive environments. Yeah, loving kindness meditation, Aaron, absolutely. So when you, yeah, so this is really cool. The drawbacks of it, or I guess the limitations of it, would just be one, that these neuroperipherals are very much emerging technologies. They are not the most reliable all the time. And of course, you know, AR, VR headsets are not always the cheapest thing. So, you know, while this is a really great intervention in some cases, it works for some, but not for others. So now let's look at gamified skills training. And I will get you to work for me. Okay, I hope that doesn't auto advance. So gamified skills training. I mentioned earlier that there are clinically shown, scientifically shown, meditation being one of them, mindfulness meditation being one of them, gratitude journaling being one of them. These are different practices that have been shown in the lab to help promote focus and resilience to anxiety and depression. So for instance, people who engage in a gratitude practice every day, it has been shown like effect sizes on par with antidepressants in some cases to be able to help to stave off depression. People who engage in mindfulness meditation, there's a lot of research out there that shows that it decreases the activation of the amygdala and increases the gray matter of the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that allows you to respond rather than react. So when something stressful happens, instead of going straight into that fight or flight cycle, you have that pause and you have the ability to, how is this shown? What type of data? I guess we'll get to these questions at the end. So yeah, you engage in the mindfulness meditation and you have an increased ability to respond rather than react to stressful stimuli. So these are some different games that are out there that are gamifying these types of skills training. So one of them is called Shadow's Edge by the Digging Deep project. This is a really cool one. It is a mobile game and it's free to play. And it is taking you through a narrative journaling curriculum. So they've developed a narrative journaling curriculum, particularly for helping people with a health diagnosis. And as you're playing the game, you are in the world of Shadow's Edge that has been destroyed. And your goal is to gather journal pages and fill them, which brings the town back to life. Another thing that's cool about it is it's got this kind of urban punk theme to it, in the sense that when Shadow's Edge is gone, it is all blank. And so they give you a spray paint can and a bunch of stencils, and they allow you to basically tag whatever you want all over the city and sort of make the city your own. So it's got a narrative therapy and also an art therapy component to it. And what they've done now is they've started going social with it. So there's a platform where you can, you know, add friends and stuff like that and do collaborative artistic expression through the app. So what Rosie and Kevin over there and that whole team has done is really impressive. So check out Shadow's Edge. Endeavor RX by Akili is the first FDA certified game. It has been certified as a treatment for focus disorders, so like ADHD. I mentioned before, mindfulness meditation is another goal for this, but The ability of being able to recognize distraction and bring yourself back to a point of focus done enough through a process called neuroplasticity strengthens the neural fibers in the brain in such a way that you can indeed strengthen your attention. And Endeavor RX is now a FDA certified game towards that purpose. So that's pretty cool. And last, we have Playing by Vismaya. This is a passion project by a solo developer. It's out on Steam. And this is a game that also is meditation focused. And as you stay regular with your practice, you can watch the nature around you grow. So when you are at day 5, you got these little shrubs, but by day 20, they're little trees. And by day 150, you're starting to set up some hardwoods. So really cool things happening in the gamified skills training space. And I certainly would not be talking about this without plugging Amaru, the self-care virtual pet. So this is what my team has been working on now for the past couple of years. And we have also entered into this gamified skills training space. So Amaru is coming out 15th of May, if all goes well. And what this is a game where you check in with your pet and you check in with yourself. So you have 3 customizable self-care goals for you. Maybe it's to engage in your gratitude journal. Maybe it's to go for a run. Maybe it's to do a meditation. We have different resources in the app, but you can also bring in your own. And when you meet your self-care goals, you are rewarded with gold gems, you keep streaks alive, you get treasure, and you're able to care for and bond with your pet. So we've really been working hard on this. We're very proud of it, and we look forward to showing it to you very soon. So what have we learned? Look at Amaru dance. He's absolutely shameless. I'm gonna hit, oh. I wanted to pause that graphic so it doesn't just keep doing that the whole time. Oh, well, it's just a little bit. He's just going to keep dancing. It's okay. I told you we were going to get dark and then we get light. So now you get to watch Amaru dance. So what have we learned over this journey the past couple of years of making a game in this space? One is really interesting player motivation. So for those of you who are in game design, you talk about player motivation a lot. A lot of us like to talk about the, is there autonomy, relatedness, and competence? It's that self-determination theory model for those of you who are in the psychology of games. So we really wanted to get into, when making a game to help people with anxiety and depression, what was the core motivation underneath? So we went out and we interviewed a bunch of people on the health, at a mental health conference. We interviewed a bunch of just self-described gamers. And what we heard over time, over and over again, what came back to us was, I want to get a grip on my mental health so that I can be a resource for others. There was this underlying altruistic intrinsic motivation to the mental health journey that wasn't a selfish one. It was an altruistic one. It was one of wanting to get better to help other people. And that's actually how we ended up at Virtual Pet as the medium for our game, because we felt that that was a perfectly supportive and mutual relationship that supported that core motivation. What we've learned is that there's a large consumer demand for this type of product. We've had a very highly successful Kickstarter campaign. We have an Indiegogo underway, and ours is not the only product in this space that seems to be getting a lot of traction. So if this is something that you're passionate about, there is a market for it. The player impact. We get messages from our beta testers, like the one to the top right here. The app just helped me prevent a full-on crisis of self-worth when it comes to work. The meditation breathing exercise definitely works well to help fight off the thoughts that cause the spiral effect. These are not infrequent that we receive messages like this. So, you can have a real impact here. Different people need different media to expose them to tools that can help them. And I think that the gamer space is ripe for, getting these types of trainings out to them if we can find ways to meet them where they are, which is oftentimes on their mobile phone. The player community. So when we engaged in this, we didn't really take into account that when you put a sign up and you say, hey, we're making a game that's going to help people with focus and resilience to anxiety and depression, that you're going to attract a lot of people with issues with focus and anxiety and depression. So you got to be ready for that. So one thing that we did, fortunately, there was a streamer called Mziety, Marie, we're super grateful for. She pointed us to this organization called Mental Health First Aid. And so we were all able to take an online training to get us to a point where we are by no means, certified clinicians, we're not therapists ourselves. But what we are capable of doing is sort of recognizing when a person's in distress and asking the right questions and delivering them to resources. Sort of the same way that somebody with physical first aid is not a doctor, but learns certain techniques and tools to be able to assist a person who's in crisis until a licensed medical professional can arrive. So if you do find yourself wading into the space, understand that you're taking on more than just being a game company at this point, and you do need to be aware of that. And finally, game dev demand. So what's been exciting about this is I get contacted by a lot of people who want to work on this type of project, because as much as like horror games and shooting games and puzzle games and all that's fun, match 3 through fun, people want to do something that has an impact. People want to do something that has a pro-social impact on their industry and on their customers. And so when people hear about what we're doing, they're really excited about it. So I would say that this may be a bit of an edge for you as a company in the talent space if you have a mission greater than just making the new coolest shooter or the new coolest fighting game or whatever that may be. And that is not to talk trash about any of that stuff. I love a good action game, but it's just something to take into account that sometimes your developers are looking for something with a little bit to kind of give them what is the purpose of all of this. And I think that we've had some success in attracting really talented people because of the mission behind it. And all right, that was really short. That was only 3 minutes and 25 seconds. No, it's 3:25, but I've got a lot more time. So what I can do is field all sorts of questions. I've highlighted very briefly a lot of different projects that are going on. So I'm happy to go into those in more detail. I'm happy just to go down and answer all the questions that are there. I also could demo Amaru, but I would need to do it off a mobile device, and I don't know how that's going to work technologically. So Dan, maybe with enough time, we could fight our way through it.
All right.
But
okay, yeah. So you were going to do what?
I can demo. Yeah, I could demo Amaru like through my phone, but I would need to know technologically how to do that.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to do that on the fly. I mean, if it's a Samsung, you could do the Samsung. What is that program called? Samsung Flow. If it's a Samsung.
No,
but that would take some time. But you know what we can do? We can go through and answer some questions, which I know that there is some. So let me get up here at the top. We do have a comment from Roger Noonan. I'm interested in this topic because I myself have dealt with depression. A lot of people have dealt with that, which is, it is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Even a lot of people say that they're going through it currently. Some people have ADHD. Here's an interesting comment. I believe there's nothing inherently wrong with a sanity mechanic as long as it's not implied to be how mental illness is. If you're faced with unmentionable horrors, of course, you'll have stress from it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So just to take both of those comments. So Roger, yep, you're in good company here. I did not get into this line of work by not having depression myself. Actually getting into, mindfulness meditation and things like that was my journey out of depression. One of the reasons why Amaru ended up becoming the SelfCare virtual pet was the recognition that that is not the path out of depression for everyone. So we wanted to create an experience which was one where people could customize the SelfCare regimen that worked for them, while also providing some tools that we know have clinically been shown to be of benefit. So you're in good and larger company, and we're all working at how to pull ourselves out of it. To Candle Lumen's comment, yes, absolutely. I mean, hey, I'm not going to lie. Eternal Darkness is one of my favorite games. Amnesia: The Dark Descent, using a sanity meter against your health meter was a perfect divided goal condition to create a very stressful horror game. So, I mean, these things have their place. But I think what is interesting about it is in contrast to the way that Ninja Theory treated it for Senuas, right? And how if we're going to have a hero, not letting that hero be defined by their psychosis, like actually going in, talking to family members, talking to people who have the affliction, talking to experts who work with these people, and making sure that we're creating a really high fidelity person. I think that's what really gave Senuas its brilliance and why it resonated with so many people.
I believe so. I believe that totally. So here's some interesting stuff from Aaron Bowers. I recently finished the book Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, and he touched upon how our near constant use of devices and social media correlates with the meteoric rise in mental health issues. Part of this is because these tools have been deliberately engineered to encourage addictive use for maximum profit generation. And the last comment is perhaps we need to step away from technology if we want to reclaim our mental health. But the question is, What are your thoughts on this topic? And do you advocate for folks to establish boundaries around how often we interface with our devices and social media?
Yes. So, yeah, that's wonderful. I highly recommend, if you are interested in learning more about this, check out The Social Dilemma. The Center for Humane Technology put it out. I've been following them for some time. Tristan Harris was an engineer over at Facebook. Like, he literally worked on the like button. If you think about, for instance, how a lot of our social media feeds, how you drag them down from the top and then it pops back up and sometimes refreshes with new social reinforcement, that's literally designed after the slot machine. So the slot machine is one of the most addictive. It's variable reinforcement. It's just dopamine. It's just dopamine candy for our brain. We love to be able to pull a thing and have a random number generated, a probabilistic chance at reinforcement. And we'll just do it all day long, which is what we do, right? And that's why we infinite scroll, as you will. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we are not going to be I think that technology is only going to become ever more present. So the question becomes, how can we build resilience to it? Because I think, as much as I've kind of thought about this, let's just do sort of the Amish thing, but just draw the line at 1998, I don't know, flip phones, you can all just join me, we'll just do the thing. But I don't know, a lot of us, I think, there's a lot of benefit that comes with technology as well. So we got to find a way to live with it. And I think that there's Tristan and the Center for Humane Technology have had some impact on this, to the point now where if you have a Google device, you may notice that these digital well-being features have started popping up, the sort of grayscale turning on at night. These are things that we're sort of walking back what they called the race to the bottom of the brainstem, which is all about just keeping us as addicted and inflamed and on screen as possible. So in a game design, though, you have to think about whether or not you are inviting someone into your game and promising them relief from, say, their anxiety, and then instead just providing them with a new screen addiction, right? So you've got to be very mindful of this kind of thing, which is why in Amaru, we actually build reinforcement into taking screen breaks. You can send Amaru off on a quest, and if you actually don't look at your phone for a while, he'll come back and he'll bring you something for when you play again. So I found that, in psychology, the best way to get people to do stuff is to reinforce it. And so if we want people to disconnect from their devices more, instead of, punishing or saying, shame on you, hey, reinforce taking breaks from your devices. That would be one thing to do.
So here's another question from Isaiah. With video game addiction and people with depression's likeliness to become reliant on something, how can video games be a positive impact on these people? I think you were just touching on that, but if you'd like to expand.
Sure. So again, the benefits of gamification are that, especially and don't get me wrong, if you've got a medication that works well for you, great. If you've got therapy that works well for you, great. Whatever works for you, fantastic. But if the self-care or the skills training is something that is interesting to you, forming any habit, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's going for a run, whatever it is, forming a new habit is hard. It takes 2 months. It takes 2 months of regular practice before it really starts to feel routine. But games are very, very good at providing scaffolds of smaller level reinforcements on the way up to a reward so that you don't have that drop off, right? So our goal with Amaru was to create a game that the experience would last about 2 months. And over that period of time, what are you doing? You're bonding with your pet, it's leveling up, you're seeing cuter animations, you're opening new locations. There's little reinforcements along the way, but what we're really just trying to do is keep you engaged with your self-care practice long enough that it sticks. So I think the neat thing about gamification is we can use it to scaffold by adding additional reinforcement and stuff along the way to forming the habit that the player wants to do. Getting back to the earlier comment about, the business model of keeping people on screen, because so many of our things are ad revenue generated, keeping people on screen. The thing that's different about using a game to scaffold someone else's goal as opposed to your own goal, it's somebody coming to a game like Amaru would be saying, I have a goal of I want to be able to, meditate more or stick with my gratitude practice or whatever. We want to build a game that scaffolds that. Whereas what the other model does is it says, okay, I know you came here to check your email, but this guy wants to sell you something. So I'm going to pull your attention away from what you were doing and put it over there. It's a very different model. So you just got to be mindful of supporting and scaffolding your player's intention rather than trying to wrest it from them and move it somewhere else.
I love mindfulness is such a good skill that a lot of people don't know about, and using it in many different ways. Here we go. A game I really like is SelfCare, #SelfCare. I just downloaded it because I was reading that comment. I'm like, I want to check that out. It's a game for very little pressure, if any at all, that guides the user through self-care and insight exercises, journal prompts and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, I've heard good things. Do it.
You were just talking about this. Have you heard of the Center for Human Technology? Yeah, they do a great job of outlining these same issues and how technology can be re-engineered to support mental health rather than damage it.
Yes. So again, Tristan Harris is doing really good work, and what they've done that I think is very helpful is they've helped to start giving a common language, like a common vocabulary around what these issues are, because we've all been feeling it. We all kind of know we all know that tech's been kind of draining on us in different ways. And what they've done is they've just very articulately outlined what the issues are. And once the issues are defined, now we can actually address them and attempt to solve them. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking out humanetech.com, maybe .org, but Humane Tech. Check them out. Social Dilemma is a good documentary, even if it is a little alarmist of its own right.
Right. Roger Dunan says compassion meditation, maybe another term for loving kindness meditation.
Yep, absolutely. That's so actually getting to your point about mindfulness. Mindfulness or meditation, there's more than one type, and they have different goals and actually different neurological effects. So certain meditations are based on focus. You watch the breath, the mind wanders off, you bring it back, the mind wanders off, you bring it back. This is really good for the prefrontal cortex. It's really good for ADHD. That's different from, say, open monitoring meditation, which is where you kind of take a step back and you let the mind do whatever it wants to do, and you just observe it from a non-judgmental distance. This is very good for anxiety. For depression, we've actually discovered that, it's that low feeling of self-worth and self-regard and a low connection to others that can really be the heart of that. So engaging in compassion meditations or loving kindness meditations towards yourself or towards others can have a very beneficial effect. And when people asked earlier about where are these studies coming from, it's about 40 years of research. A lot of it comes out of University of Madison, Wisconsin. There's a really great book called Altered Traits, like altered states, but altered traits. It really just talks about a lot of the basically putting people who have meditated before and after in MRI scans, looking at the changes in the brain. It's the kind of hard scientific data I needed to see to come around.
Yeah, you know what? That's funny because I was someplace and they're like, meditate. And I'm like, whatever. It's some weird hippie, monk thing. Yep. But then I was reading more about it, and there's basically the science behind it. There's Headspace on Netflix, right? Yep. And so basically the science behind it is, it had to be dumbed down for me, is like, you are exercising your happy muscle.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. So you meditate. And so I do a lot of mindfulness meditation. I do it in the morning. I do it throughout the day. And then I do it before I go to bed, where I'm just laying there and breathing and not thinking except for about my breath. Mm-hmm. And so it exercises your happy and calm and peace muscles in your brain, so that after you do it for a couple of weeks, I've noticed that I am just happier, more content. I'm calmer. Things don't bug me. And I was like, I wish I would have been doing this a long time ago.
One of the reasons why I decided to make this game was kind of that exact feeling of, man, I wish that somebody had showed me this stuff when I was like 17, and then I wouldn't have had to have gone through that whole existential crisis in my late 20s.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But yeah, I got to a point where the negative chatter in my head was so ever present that I actually didn't know what it was like to not have it. And doing mindfulness meditation was the first time probably in years I had felt a pause in the negative chatter. And so that was really the wake-up moment for me. But I had to be beaten over the head with science, because I had the same resistance to it that you did in the beginning of, this is hippie stuff. It's stuff.
And meditating is hard.
Scientist, and it's hard.
Because you're like studied it, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about like, oh, what I got to do tomorrow, and then nope. And then it's like, yeah. But man, it is great.
What people need to stick with it is a flying cat. That's what they need. They just need a flying cat. And they just get a flying cat in there. It's all good.
Oh, what is that book I have by I can't remember how to.
Thich Nhat Hanh?
Yeah. It's talking about mindfulness. When you're washing the dishes, are you washing the dishes, right? Or what are you doing? You're thinking about this and that and this. So wash the dishes, right? Think about it. Think about, like, when you're eating food, think about the food. You enjoy your food so much more when you aren't thinking about anything else or talking. You're just enjoying the texture and the taste and the whatever of your food. And man, my life, literally meditating, it was one of the things that have changed my life for sure.
Oh, really happy to hear that.
So Destiny Price, I have a major interest in serious games, especially for medical reasons. What major issues have you run into with development or marketing?
So with development, just know that you are now making a game and a health app. And guess what? It's already hard to make a game. And now you've got to make it so that these things synergize in a way. So it doesn't, because if you run into a place where it's not fun enough to be a game, people are just going to play games. And if it's not as good of a well-being app, people will just use well-being apps. So you are taking on a big order by wading into this. So now another thing is that, for instance, as much as I can talk about, the research suggests that mindfulness meditation might help with this, and gratitude journaling has been linked to this and this. I absolutely will never say that Amaru, the self-care virtual pet, treats any of these things, because it is not an FDA certified thing. You know, there are regulatory agencies out there where they are the only ones who are allowed to say that this is allowed to treat this or do this.
Right.
So yeah, if you wade into this space, you are taking on a larger burden of basically the value proposition that you're promising. You are promising something that is both good for you and fun, you know? So it's, it's a tall order. It's a
tall order. All right, let's see here.
From the marketing standpoint, I will say that having that pro-social message definitely brings people and also brings talent. So, you know, costs and benefits.
So how do you spell the name of your game?
Amaru, A-M-A-R-U.
Amaru, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like Amari or Mari, and I just couldn't figure it out. There we go.
It's all good.
Okay, I'm downloading it right now.
We often you're getting the demo. There's quite a bit more coming out.
Okay, well, we'll get to me afterwards. You can hook me up with the whole thing.
Sure thing.
That would be awesome. Here we go. How do you refine the game mechanics to empower the player and help them feel better, as opposed to making them feel stressed about meeting streaks? Yeah, we
discovered that our players had absolutely no tolerance for punishment of any kind. In our early builds, man, we had, if you didn't come back in time, Amaru would it would be like status messages of Amaru missed you and he's all anxious now. None of that flew in the slightest way. We tried to incentivize gamers to get on a good sleep hygiene cycle, and they almost rage uninstalled our game. So the answer is reinforce, don't punish. So what we are doing now is we do want to have a streak mechanic in the game because streaks are motivating. But what it does allow is for the player to get bonus stuff, but there's never a punishment for missing a streak. So that's honestly, though, I should have got ahead of that. Reinforcement almost always trumps punishment.
Instead of like, oh, I missed you. No, that makes me sad.
Yeah, right? And once again, falling into the exact trap of delivering like anxiety on Amaru as a negative status effect to a person with anxiety is just not a very empathetic message. So yeah, we learned our lesson. And now,
well, it's really it's totally about knowing the demographics, right? And the people that play that kind of stuff is a completely different demographic than the average CS:GO Fortnite gamer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As a person who just loves to get my ass kicked in Dark Souls, this was a very different, type of experience. And so but we did a very community-driven game, We've had a Discord that stuck with us really for the past year since we released the demo that you just downloaded, and just gotten tons and tons of feedback, and we've just built the game to really suit people who take a loving to it.
Oh my gosh. Now I'm excited to play. Here we go. Have you found the experience of crowdfunding on Indiegogo compared to Kickstarter? How have you found it? I've heard that people are increasingly preferring the former.
Indiegogo compared to Kickstarter. There are pros and cons. Both platforms have their limitations. One thing I'll say is that Kickstarter is just a larger platform by about 4 times. So, you're getting more exposure and probably more dollars coming from people who are browsing across. I found the user experience of Indiegogo to be a bit better than some of the Kickstarter features, but both have treated us well. What we're actually doing right now is what's called an Indiegogo in demand, which is cool because what it does is it basically displays to Indiegogo that, you know, this game already raised $63,000 on Kickstarter. It's already fully funded, and you now have the opportunity to get in on it, but it's not a project that might not fund, right? So our Indiegogo is actually basically an extension of our Kickstarter on a different platform. So yeah, what I'll say about crowdfunding in general is that it can be a lot of fun. It gets a lot of enthusiasm. It's also a ton of work. And we've been contacted by people to sort of do consulting on how to do a good crowdfund. So, you know, but yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of planning, a lot of execution. But we love our Kickstarter backers though. They're good folks.
Okay. So it's just like it adds to it. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so that's one thing that I learned. I thought that it was an either or type thing, and it's not. Like, do a Kickstarter, and then if your Kickstarter funds, if I had known this, I would have done the Indiegogo immediately after. I would have just like scooted right into it. Instead, we had this big gap in between, and I don't know that served us. We probably would have kept more momentum if we just did them back to back.
That's a good lesson, though. You know, for next time.
Yep.
Phillips H. Bixby comments or has a question. Other than the game, are you planning on selling any merchandise like that plushie you showed that may be considered as comfort items for some players that may need it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are definitely, I'll plug the Indiegogo. It's still going through April 30th. So if you want this lovely exclusive golden boy, please get your Amaru. We do have additional plushies coming out. We've had a lot of requests for different products. So I guess we'll see what's happening. I think that we could probably get really distracted by going down the merch, and we just want to make sure we have a really solid product first. But there's definitely more Amaru merch to come. We also have a really nice
and during merch on Kickstarter and Indiegogo to go, it costs a lot of money. It takes up a lot of money too, for sure.
It does.
Well, you know what, Gabe? Thank you so much for this. Oh, wait, we do have another question. Excellent. And you know what? We've got some more time. So if you have more questions, please drop them in there. All right, we're getting more. Do you think that multiplayer games are better at dealing with mental illnesses, or are single player games better with dealing with mental illnesses?
Are you an extrovert or an introvert?
Right.
Yeah. I'm sure that for people who, after being drained, and let's say you're more introverted and you go out into the world and you've got it's actually interesting. They've actually shown that like introverts are more effective at being extroverts than extroverts are, because it's like a trained skill, but it's exhausting. So like, imagine you're an introvert, you're out there doing some job that is emotionally and socially draining. You're probably going to want to come home to a single player experience, right? But imagine if you're more of an extroverted person, you're not getting your social connection, and then you have a multiplayer game to play. Now, I will say that social connection in general is generally shown to be a predictor of better mental well-being. So there is that. But I also, no, I'm not gonna shoot down single player experiences. They're beautiful.
I like single player experiences, and I'm definitely an extrovert. Sean C. Gilroy, when approaching a game that addresses mental health issues, how do you make sure you are representing them properly?
Yeah, we really rely a lot on the scientific research. We don't really put anything in the game that we know doesn't have good science behind it. But also, I think anxiety and depression are things that I would say that something like psychosis, in the way that Senua did it, I think that is a experience that is more rare. And I think it is very wise that they assembled the subject matter experts and stuff that they did to make that happen. Anxiety and depression are, so common that I think that it's on a spectrum, right? It's not really a disorder until it's interfering with daily life. But the average human being knows what it's like to feel anxious. The average human being knows what it's like to feel depressed. The average human being maybe doesn't know what it's like to have auditory hallucinations, right? So I would say that the specific mental illnesses, even to use the word illness, I think is strong, but the specific mental conditions that we address in the game are ones that I think have a bit more of a broader representation.
All right, here's a question from Jack Grace. If you aren't developing a game for the sole purpose of addressing mental illness, but still want to cover it in a game, how do you balance it with core gameplay systems so it doesn't feel shallow?
If you aren't developing a game for the sole purpose. So one way that we are doing it is through lore as a reward. Your health apps, generally speaking, even ones that may have some gamification or scaffolding in them, they don't have characters. They don't have a world. They don't have things to explore, treasures to find, new art, new beauty, new sound. So I think that one way that we've done that is by putting these, these curriculums of self-care that you can really, get through many different apps. And what we've done is we've presented them in a way where you're reinforced by getting deeper into a world and deeper into a story. So I think that adding some lore to your world is definitely a place to add depth. Now also, yes, making sure that your game mechanics fit well with your theme. We basically, our core game loop is one where you engage in your self-care, which makes your aura shine, which makes you see treasure in the environment. Because when you shine, the world shines back. And you find some treasure and you use that to purchase things, and you can interact with your pet and deepen your bond, and around it goes. So we've basically developed a core game loop where it starts with do your self-care, get reinforced for doing your self-care, and now use the reinforcements that you've achieved to go have some fun, right? And then come back and do it tomorrow. So yeah, just make sure that your core game loop supports what you're trying to do. And getting back to the point earlier about screen addiction, building in the thing like reinforcing taking a screen break is exactly in line with our message. We did not and also like there's a sleep time and wake time that you can set Amaru to where he goes to bed, because we're not trying to keep you up all night. We're not sending you push notifications to get you to come and come play our game, right? So everything down to the monetization model needs to be considered. Just got to make sure that the core game loop supports the spirit of the game.
Excellent. Let's see here. Do you think that multiplayer games are better at dealing with mental illnesses or single player games? Oh wait, I'm sorry, I got backed up there.
Not a problem, but we got Candle Lumen's got one down here.
There we go. Since people have different needs for self-care / mental health, what are pros and cons for creating games that cater to a broad audience versus one broad game plus more games that cater to specific audiences?
Sure. So we, when I first got on this path, I wanted to make a Metroidvania that taught people how to meditate using a neurofeedback controller. But turns out meditation is not the thing that everyone needs to do, right? So we actually pivoted away from that and decided to go more self-care. And that allowed us to address a broader audience. That being said, I might still make that game. And if I do make that game is going to be more specifically targeted. So I think that the benefit of the broader game, more accessible, but shallower, right? I mean, if you take on this type of task, you, in addition to having to create everything that goes into a game, which we all know is an immense amount, is you have to come up with a self-care curriculum. And you got to present that as well, right? So if you go to a game like Plane, for instance, which is just all meditation, right? You might have a more streamlined, deeper experience if that's what you're looking for. And if you go to Shadow's Edge, which is, narrative and art therapy, they probably, if they decided to dive also into different meditations and stuff, they would start getting too broad. So I would say that, if you're looking to get sort of a sampler and address a broad audience, then having a more general game like Amaru is great. But if you've got one particular demographic that you're going after, you'll have, be able to deliver more to that audience. So just, games are also business, making sure that you're doing that good customer discovery, knowing who your customers are, knowing what their needs are and their motivations are. That's going to guide you as to how broad or shallow you need to go.
Well, this has been really good stuff. Really good stuff. So, Gabe, if you want to join in our Discord over there, we have discord.gg/indiegamebusiness for you guys. If you don't know what the Discord is yet, there is a post-session chat in there, and you could even go into a voice chat in there. You could use one of the voice chats if you like to answer some more questions and discuss this kind of stuff in detail. We actually have, we have some marketing strategy stuff coming up, using competitive analysis to improve your marketing strategy with Logan. Logan's in the house. That's pretty cool. And that is coming up in just a couple of minutes here. Right at the top of the hour, Logan Williams. That's who's our guest. Oh, let's just ask. Let's do one more. Here we go. Wouldn't the immersive experience of a VR technology help with a mental well-being game?
Absolutely, definitely recommend checking out. Yeah, check out Helium. The only thing about that is accessibility, right? VR headsets are expensive, so not everyone can do those. Thank you all for filling all of the time with my very short session. Really appreciate it. I'll join you over in Discord along with this guy. All right. See you later.
What kind of sounds that guy make?
look up an animal called a caracal, Caracal. It's an African cat. It's like, if you have ever heard a cat chirp at a bird? Yeah, that, but like a wild cat.
Okay, I just wanted you to impersonate
I'm not
it.
going to.
You're not going to do it? Okay.
I'm going to steal his thunder.